Few years ago, one of my clients did something that would look like a mistake to almost anyone watching over his shoulder. His daughter needed braces, $2,600 out of pocket. And he had the money sitting right there in his health savings account, tax-free, ready to use. And he didn't touch it. He paid the orthodontist from his credit card, snapped a photo of the receipt, saved it in a folder on his phone, and left the HSA completely alone. And that wasn't a mistake. That was the entire strategy, because he wasn't using that account to pay for braces. He was using the braces to build a reserve of tax-free cash that he'll tap into 15 to 20 years from now. That one small move, repeated with discipline, is how many high earners turn a regular health account into one of the most powerful tax-free tools that they own. And that's what this video is about. Not because they found a loophole, because they learned the rules and built a system around them. You see, most people use an HSA to pay for this year's medical bills, while the wealthy use it as a tax-free ATM that they tap into 20 years from now. So I'll show you the rule that makes this legal, the specific receipt system you need to follow, what the 2027 numbers look like, and how my clients are using this exact strategy right now. This isn't about a copay. It's about a tax-free cash lever that you control. Let me start off by introducing this client. We'll call him Keith. Keith is 46 and a VP of product at a software company. Between his base, bonus, RSUs, and his wife's income, the household lands north of $600K a year. They have 2 kids and a pretty typical executive lifestyle. And like most people at that income level, the biggest expense isn't the mortgage, it's taxes. And when Keith first sat down with us, he said something that I hear constantly. Everything I do gets taxed. My salary, my bonus, my equity, my gains. Isn't there something anywhere that doesn't get taxed? And that's the right question. But at this point in his life, there aren't many good answers. But the HSA is one of them. And it's the only account in the code with a true triple tax advantage. The money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and it comes out tax-free when used the right way. Your 401k, your Roth don't offer this. Only the HSA has all 3. So how do you turn a health account into a wealth account? Well, it comes down to one rule that most people never learn. Here it is. When you pull money out of an HSA for a qualified medical expense, that distribution is tax-free. Everybody knows that part. But here's the part that almost nobody uses. The IRS does not require you to reimburse yourself in the same year that you had the expense. So you can pay a medical bill out of pocket today and leave the HSA untouched. You just save the receipt and the account stays invested and keeps compounding. Then years later, whenever you want really, you reimburse yourself for those old expenses tax-free. The only 2 conditions are that the expense happened after you opened the HSA and that you kept the documentation to prove it. So back to Keith and his daughter's braces. He paid the $2,600 himself and kept the receipt. And his HSA, instead of dropping, kept every dollar invested and growing. So that receipt is now essentially an IOU, a tax-free withdrawal he can cash in at any point in the future on his schedule. And here's what makes it powerful. Once he reimburses himself and that cash hits his checking account, the IRS no longer cares what he does with it. He had the qualified expense, he has the receipt, that's the whole test. Whether he spends it on tuition or a trip to Italy is irrelevant to them. They can audit the receipt, they don't audit the vacation. So Keith isn't using his HSA to pay medical bills. He's using his medical bills to manufacture tax-free liquidity later while his account compounds the whole time. Pay cash now, let it grow tax-free, reimburse yourself later. But before you can play, you have to be eligible. So let's go over the 2027 rules because they just got published. To contribute, you need to be covered by a qualifying high-deductible health plan with no disqualifying coverage on the side. For 2027, if it's just you, you can put in $4,500. If you're covering a family like Keith is, you can contribute $9,000. And if you're 55 or older, you can add another $1,000 as a catch-up. To qualify in 2027, the plan needs a minimum deductible of $1,750 for an individual or $3,500 for a family. with out-of-pocket maximums at $8,700 or $17,400. You don't need to memorize that. You just need to confirm that your plan qualifies before you start contributing. Keith's did, so every year he does one simple thing. He maxes it out and we invest it so it's not sitting in cash. And that last part really matters. Now, the objection you might be thinking, because Keith thought it too, is I don't want to save medical receipts for 20 years. And that's fair, but you're not saving paper. You're running a simple system once. Here's exactly what Keith does. One folder in his cloud drive, inside it, a folder for each year. Inside each year, a few subfolders: dental, vision, prescriptions, doctors. And every time the family gets a receipt, he scans it with a scanner app on his phone so he gets a clean PDF. And each file gets named the same way: date, provider, amount, and category. And once a year, he exports the folder and backs it up. Because if these receipts are eventually going to represent 6 figures in tax-free cash, a little redundancy is worth 10 minutes a year. That's the whole system. But if you contribute and invest, but get lazy on documentation, you haven't built a tax-free reserve. You've built a future tax problem. Those receipts are what turn a taxable withdrawal into a tax-free one. So what does this add up to? Keith maxes the family limit each year, roughly $9,000 moving forward. Over 20 years, that's about $180,000 in contributions. He invests all of it, and at a conservative growth rate of 8% a year, that account will be worth around $400,000. And it went in with a deduction each year and grew for 2 decades tax-free. And a big chunk can come out completely tax-free because he's been stacking documented receipts the whole time. For a family of 4, the braces, the doctor visits, the prescriptions, the vision, they add up faster than you think. And every one of those dollars is a future tax-free withdrawal waiting in the bank. So fast forward, Keith is in his early 60s. The kids are grown, and he's stepped into a hybrid retirement doing some consulting and board work, and he and his wife want to take the entire family on a big trip to the tune of about $40,000. Some people would fund that by selling taxable investments, which triggers capital gains, or by pulling from tax-deferred accounts, which triggers ordinary income tax. Either way, the government takes a cut, and to net $40,000, he might have to withdraw $50,000 or more. Keith does none of that. He just opens the folder that he's been building for 20 plus years. And he adds up the qualified expenses that he paid for out of pocket and never reimbursed himself for. He finds $40,000 worth of documented receipts and reimburses himself from the HSA tax-free. No capital gains, no income tax, no penalty. The trip is paid for, and the IRS is satisfied because every dollar is backed by a receipt from a qualifying expense after he opened the HSA account. That's the strategy fully executed, and how he turned 20 years of medical bills into a tax-free bank account that he controls. Now, this only works if you respect the rules. So first off, stay eligible. If you move off a qualifying plan, you have to stop contributing. The account stays yours, but new contributions can trigger penalties. Number 2, don't over-contribute. The limits can go up, but they are firm. Third, you can only reimburse yourself for expenses after you open the HSA. So the sooner you open and fund it, the sooner the receipt clock starts. Fourth, keep your documentation clean. If you can't prove it, it isn't tax-free. Fifth, actually invest the account. If Keith had left it in cash, it wouldn't be worth nearly the same amount. The growth is the whole point. And there are a few states, like California being the big one, that don't conform to the federal rules, so you lose the state tax deduction. You still get the full federal benefit. Just go in with your eyes open. Now, if you have an 8-figure net worth, $9,000 a year can feel like a rounding error. On its own, it's small, but this is not the centerpiece of a financial plan. But it is a tax-free asset compounding quietly in your longest time horizon, while your equity, your retirement accounts, and your taxable accounts do the heavy lifting. When we build a plan at Tailored Wealth, the HSA typically sits in the 10-plus year band as a tax-free liquidity that we can switch on later. And that's the whole philosophy. Match every dollar to when you'll need it and have every account have a specific objective. He didn't get wealthy because of his HSA, but it's a perfect example of how he thinks. Small, disciplined advantages stacked year after year until they add up to real money and, most importantly, real freedom. And that's what separates the people who earn a lot from the people who actually build lasting wealth. So if you qualify for an HSA and use it the way Keith does, it can be one of the most powerful tools in the tax code. Not because it's flashy, because it's the only triple tax-free account you'll ever have, and because it rewards discipline that most high earners never apply to it. The rule is simple, the system is simple. The only hard part is starting now and staying consistent. But an HSA is just one piece. The real leverage comes when it's coordinated with everything else. Your equity comp, your tax strategy, your liquidity, and your path to making work optional. And that's exactly what we do for executives like Keith. So if you want to see where a strategy like this fits in your broader plan, book a Wealth Clarity chat using the link below. We'll take a look at your situation and where the tax-free opportunities are hiding. And if this was useful, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.